Hello, everybody. It is John Pollock and Wai Ting. What day is it? It's Thursday, March 24th. Hi, Wai.
Thursday. Yes, that is correct, John. Yeah,
Thank
one more
God.
day till the end of the week.
One more to go.
Yeah, how has it been so far?
Dude, the last 12 hours, 15 hours has just been like a comedy of errors, okay, on this end. First of all, I very much want to apologize that I cannot join you on Wednesday night. A big thank you to our MVP, John Cena, who, when we say last minute, I am not being, that is no hyperbole. It was literally about 60 seconds before I think you guys connected that he was alerted, dude, can you please tag in?
This is quite the rush. Yeah, I have to
God.
say.
I was not in a very happy state as I was firing off that message and communicating with you. So yes, I was watching Dynamite, and then all of a sudden, Chris Statlander is on the screen after the Red Velvet Layla Hirsch match, and we go to the back, Jade Cargill, and boom, my TV is just dead. It just goes black. And then my internet's down at the same time. So I don't know what led to this dual shutdown, but it was just like perfect. Just perfect. Rebooted everything. No signal on my TV, so I know I'm missing the main event, but I'm more concerned about just reconnecting so that we can do this show in 10 minutes. And there was no connection. I couldn't connect through my phone. I was ready to just take both of these laptops and just chuck them. That was my state way. That's how I deal with anger.
I'll bet. No, I've seen you around just, any sort of technical mishap, and it's, if you want to see John at his most stressed, that is among, one of the top things. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. Got the show done.
Yes. And then what else happened? This morning, our hot water was gone. And then right as it's all fixed. Not a big deal. I don't know if it's related at all to this I wouldn't even call it a storm we had, but it was definitely like the weather was all messed up last night. So that's what I'm blaming it on. Mm-hmm. And then just like the icing on the cake is just like 2 minutes before we're about to go to air, like this thing just drops. It just falls. It just falls like right out. So I had to switch microphones. Okay. That's one thing after the other.
It falls out. Okay, so you mean the screw was loose?
It was loose, and anyway, I couldn't get this thing back together, so I'm using this backup mic, which is going to create more work for Wai apparently. So there you go. Okay. It's just going great.
It's all right, dude. You take a deep breath. Everything's okay. We're here.
Yeah. How was your morning?
It was great.
Oh, wonderful. No connection issues. I had a nice shower.
The shower was last night. I shower in the evenings, but I had a nice bowl of spaghetti, made myself a nice coffee, my French press,
Yeah.
Things were great.
Well, I definitely should be coming over to your house to watch Dynamite on Wednesday nights. That's
the invite's always open, of course.
It was the most frustrating part is that, we do enough of these night things. So it's like the odd time one of us is off, you at least get the night off. It's like I had watched all of Dynamite. I've done all these notes for it. It's like I've done all the work. It's not like
don't let the work go to waste, John. What did you think of Dynamite?
I am not going through this whole show, but
well, tell us about some highlights at least.
I love that CM Punk Dax Harwood match. I was in a tremendous mood watching that match. Here are like the two biggest Bret Hart fans on the anniversary of a very famous Bret Hart match, the Steve Austin submission match happening, and I just thought this was a terrific match between these two, and just like. When they announced that, they only announced it late in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those announcements where, again, it's like, here are two of Tony Khan's pieces on the board that he's just going to throw together. There's no story. There's this Bret Hart connection. But they announced it. I was like, what an interesting match. I was going into Dynamite, like, very intrigued to watch this. And it's a cold match, but it was great.
Hard for me to believe anymore that he's just coming up with these matches.
I don't think
a few
so
hours
either.
beforehand. You probably had.
I think it's very strategic that they want to have
that
that last minute announcement and you strategize. Like, look at next week's Dynamite. We got 2 matches announced. I think they'll be very it's staggering, the announcements, and having some like the day of. And I was proof positive. They dropped that Punk Dax Harwood announcement, and I was like, that's a really cool match to start the show. If I was on the fence, I'd be tuning in to watch for that to start off the show.
Well, to me, it trumped, Jay Lethal versus Adam Cole is probably the match I was looking forward to the most on the show itself, and it didn't disappoint. For me, as somebody who might not be as big of a Bret Hart fan as either of those two, especially Dax Harwood, because I truly believe that he is probably the biggest Bret Hart fan in the world. But I was really pleased to see that type of match because it felt very much like a Bret style type of match. And
they bookended the show where we had sharpshooter spots in the opener and Garcia with like his variation of the sharpshooter at the end of the show.
Which I wonder if, he'll feel pressure to change. I mean, depending on, how often because we have Sting in the company as well, of course, John. So it's a pretty popular move.
Sting's widening his arsenal. I think it's like anyone can do.
The balcony dive will be his new finish.
Yes. I will say one thing that I thought, like, I'm not a big stickler when it comes to, certain finishes where you've got to incorporate the referee, but when you compound them together, like we had on this show, the Jay Lethal Adam Cole match, and I always hate this spot, is not necessarily the specific O'Connor roll, but just when the guy is going for a finish. And in this one, Lethal rolls him up for the O'Connor roll. Paul Turner is right there to see a pin is about to begin, and he runs to the apron because Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish are on the apron. And it just, to me, is like a silly spot when, like, here could be the end of the match, and the referee is diverting his attention to go focus on the people on the apron. So, whatever. It's one spot. Then we get Bryce Remsburg, who is outwitted by Layla Hirsch with the Phantom Wrench to replace the wrench that he's taking away. Mm-hmm. And then in the main event, we get the Jericho spot where he rams himself into the steps, and Aubrey is confused and ejects the Dark Order, which leads to, several moments later, the weapon spot to end the match. And again, on their own, I can like understand these. But to me, this show, it was built around establishing the Jericho group. They were the main event. And if we're going to do, instead of back-to-back weapon spots to end the show in both those matches, let's go with the Jericho one. This is the sports entertainment group. So let's use the sports entertainment trope to end it rather than, I just saw no need for the Layla Hirsch Red Velvet with that kind of an ending when we were doing it right again in the main event, which was the priority on the show.
Yeah. Honestly, Sino brought up the same point watching the show last night, and for me, like it didn't even cross my mind, and I wonder if that's because I watch so much WWE that I just kind of take it as like, oh, okay, this is pro wrestling, this is the norm. Of course, 50% of matches will end with some sort of referee, screwy finish, but in AEW, I suppose it is a bit more.
It was all uncommon. Three of them together that like it compounded it for me when you had like three different spots where like the referee was made to be like the audience is like seeing them just be either outsmarted or just being outsmarted by the villain.
Well, of course, I very much trust your opinion and Sino's opinion, and the fact that the two of you are pointing it out, I'm imagining many of the audience might agree. So, I mean, again, we know that AEW, the wrestlers, and one of the great things about it is that the wrestlers have a lot of free reign to dictate their own stories and their own matches. But I guess something like this does call into question like how much cohesion is there? Is there an overseer to go through the minute details of making sure like things like referee bumps aren't taking place in 3 consecutive matches?
Yeah, the main event was like really entertaining though. I thought John Silver looked like really great. He had a big performance. That hot tag was a lot of fun. And again, I think like the Jericho group, I thought that promo really solidified them last week. Like it feels like a very cohesive group now. And just with like the little, like the explanation last week of all of their roles in the group, I think that goes a long way. Jericho looks fantastic right now.
Incredible.
It's
honestly.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. They showed that photo of him from 20 years ago. And I mean, it certainly doesn't look like 20 years have passed with him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess with Punk, I mean, like he's making like the title references, and I think everyone's looking at that being probably your Double or Nothing main event for the end of May. I think there's a lot of interesting ways that you can go throughout the rest of this year with Punk, and your pay-per-view after that is in Chicago. MJF's bringing up that they will do another match, and I think doing a rematch one day in Chicago makes a whole lot of sense after MJF beat him there. And I wouldn't do that third match anytime soon. I would kind of hold on to that one until it's right. And maybe Punk and MJF for the title in Chicago, you could be there come September. And I think that would be a big match, whether it's Punk defending or even MJF as champion. I mean, there's lots of many different ways of where they can go, but I'm very high on CM Punk right now. I just think he's doing terrific work. I think he's one of, if not the highlights of the show, and yeah, I really love that opener.
Yeah, both Punk and MJF, both of them, I think, benefited so greatly. I mean, it almost doesn't matter who won that feud. You know, they both come out of it incredibly hot. And, you know, MJF is continuing his thing with Wardlow at the moment. Big spot of the night, though, John, probably Jeff Hardy. Somehow.
This was my internet connection in human life form.
Yes, your internet connection was on a ledge in the concession stand, diving onto a merchandise table. Yeah,
this was insane, dude. This whole match was insane. That Darby spot being thrown down the steps, which you probably forgot by the end of this thing. Yeah, like you got your highlight reel moment for Jeff Hardy that you can put into the open of the show if you so choose. But yeah, it was pretty spectacular. I look at Sting, and I think he was definitely more reduced in this than the last Tornado tag match.
It's a TV
he should
show.
be. I would argue like this was one match that it didn't necessarily need Sting in it, but yeah, I would just want to just for the man's own well-being, not feeling the need to have to top everybody in these matches. Like the dude's 63 years old. This is insanity.
Well, we're also talking about the Hardy Boys too, you know, who are like Jeff himself is 44.
Matt took that big spot off the stage. Yeah.
And like they're diving off of balconies still. So to me, it was very much a match, you know, designed to put the spotlight on them, and I thought it certainly did in a big way.
Yeah. So it was overall like a pretty entertaining edition. I fully I avoided listening to your show with Sino because I thought we might discuss it here. So that is why
I'm not offended in the least. Yeah, I'm sorry that it doesn't seem like they went this week, at least with your suggestion of Jerry Garcia, which I think we will continue to use. I certainly will. Great name.
I promise you, Jericho would hate that name. I would imagine.
What, the guy who came up with Sammy Hagar?
He was when I interviewed him once, and this was years and years ago, and he had started teaming with Miz, and we threw out the idea of being called Chris Miz. He hated it. He just hated it.
I think he only hates it because he didn't come up with it himself, because that definitely would be something that he would come out with. Anyway, what about this name, the Blackpool Combat Club?
Yeah, it's a name. Yeah, it's like they're gonna. I'm sure people will buy some Blackpool Combat Club T-shirts.
If it's, I'm sure it'll be a really nice looking shirt.
You think John Moxley's ever been to Blackpool?
I feel like he's probably been everywhere. I mean, I guess they haven't really run shows in Blackpool in the WWE, have they?
I think Blackpool is not big, but they may have. So, yeah. Danielson. I mean, the guy toured England for like years before he went to WWE. So, there you go. The Blackpool Combat Club.
Yeah, he's probably been everywhere.
All right. Well, that was Dynamite, and again, thank you to John Cena. I will now. It'll probably be like 3 months now of me watching Dynamite and being worried about my signal dropping.
I think we need a backup generator on your house or something, you know, or some sort of a telephone wire, like maybe cans with a string attached to my house, so you can at least hear Dynamite if this happens again.
This is not a young house that we have inherited. So anyway, we will see how it stands up to next week. I mean, could you imagine if this had happened next weekend?
Jesus, like if this happened during WrestleMania, holy
goodness. NXT on Tuesday night, 628,000 viewers, a .14 in the demo. They finished 26th on cable, so they were up a bit from the week prior. And this was their best figures since January. So, not a giant increase from the prior week, but nonetheless still their highest in 2 months. They were huge increase among males, 18 to 34. In the demo overall, they were up 34%. That was all men, which was up like something crazy, like 105% from last week. But women were actually down in that demo. So that growth was all because of men. And in Canada, doing 73,000 viewers on Sportsnet 360. And we've got one episode to go until Stand and Deliver. So this is like in the range of NXT. And they did not have the NCAA men's tournament, any games on Tuesday night. So that helped. And I don't think Dynamite did either on Wednesday night. So in theory, Dynamite should have a much clearer path to a stronger number. But always hard to predict these numbers. I've retired from that game.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, this shows, I think, a level of sustainment for NXT. Do you think that's because of the integration with Raw? Is it a Dolph Ziggler effect? What do you think?
I don't know if it's if it would be specific to Dolph Ziggler, but I do think the integration over time helps, and having something to push each Monday towards Tuesday. I think generally that helps more than hurts. But I think that NXT, it falls into like, I look at, and this is not across the board, there's probably many outliers to this, but I think by and large, your average fan is probably catching Raw and SmackDown and Dynamite. And everything after that is going to be dependent on their own personal life, what is really stands out that you really want to check out. And I think that's what's going to affect your NXTs, your Impact. It's a much smaller viewership than NXT, but I think that goes into all of kind of those second and third level wrestling companies of just what can I fit in, but my priorities, the most amount of people, their priorities are those three programs, and then everyone else is fighting for your attention. And I put Rampage in there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jorge Masvidal. The latest on Masvidal is that he was booked on Wednesday night, so he was he went into custody and is facing 2 felony charges of aggravated battery, resulting in great bodily harm and criminal mischief. Per online records, he has been released on bond, which was set at $15,000. This stemming from the incident on Monday night at Poppy Steak in Miami Beach, Florida, which I can only imagine is now going to be a hotspot for MMA fans to come by and take their photos of outside. And in the police report, they did redact the victim's name, but I think everybody, it's common knowledge and it has not been a secret that it is Colby Covington, who alleges that he was struck twice in the face, resulting in a broken tooth and an abrasion to his wrist, and apparently doing $15,000 or something like that of damage, maybe even more, to his Rolex watch, his $90,000 Rolex.
$90,000 Rolex. I mean, geez, that's your first mistake to.
What's your ceiling on a Rolex?
$20, like from the dude down at Pacific
When was
Mall,
the last
like,
time you wore a watch? Were you ever a watch wearer?
I was, yeah, for quite a time, especially
too.
like, when I would actually have a place to go every day. Now, like, because you can only see this, like the rest of this is just a mess. I'm not taking the time to put anything on my wrist. Are you kidding me?
I love that your wardrobe is all based around framing.
Pretty much, yeah.
I wore a watch consistently until I was in university, and I went to the beach with my friends one day and left my watch on the beach. And then when I realized it was gone, I was like, I am not replacing that. I'm done with the watch.
Yeah.
I haven't worn one since.
Well, I mean, they're really just more like, to complete a look rather than, I would say, utility. Because, I mean, shit, like, if you need the time, you look up and it's there.
So in terms of this storyway, like, do you think that the UFC has a role in this, that they should respond to this in any way? Their typical MO when it comes to this is
to use it.
Hey, they're on their own free time. I mean, what adds to all of this is probably not the wisest was that Masvidal went to social media almost immediately after this and was essentially bragging about this. And then the next on Wednesday, he runs his own Gamebred Fighting Championship group that's trying to get a license in Nevada, and this was brought up, so he has delayed that. But it was brought up to him, and he was he was very he was hardly bragging about this incident on that call with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. But if you're the UFC, do you just put your hands up? It's like, hey, we're not dealing with this, or is there some kind of responsibility that he right after this fight with Colby Covington, he pretty much said, like, this is not over, and if I see him on the streets in Miami, it's not going to be over, and called a shot, and that's what happened here.
I mean, I would assume maybe their public-facing tone, if Dana is ever asked about it in an interview, he'd probably denounce it publicly, but I think internally, don't you think they're happy that podcasts like ours are covering a stupid story like this, that TMZ is giving the front page space to one of their potential rematches that's going on? How have
I
they
guess
treated...
that's the question, is that if this is where, like, and for anyone thinking, oh God, how could they think about making a fight out of this? Dude, the Connor, the Dolly incident at the Barclays Center to me was okay. They used footage of that in the promo for him and Khabib. So please, there is absolutely no moral line when it comes to like out of the cage incidents that they will market. But this was also a fight that just happened. It was not a terribly exciting fight, and it was a convincing win for Colby Covington. So I don't know if this necessarily is where they go with this, and I think it is a pretty terrible message if the punishment here is that this guy gets a huge pay-per-view fight out of this. And I think also for Colby Covington, this is hardly some innocent bystander that, I mean, he was in this literal sense coming out of this restaurant, but what he chooses for promo material and invoking people's family members, like there's a cost that comes with that. You can't approve of what a Jorge Masvidal did, and he is going to have to face those consequences now. But Colby Covington at the same time, like this is the game you're playing with guys that like this is the potential blowback that like Jorge Masvidal is not playing pro wrestling here where, it's just heel lines from another guy that we're trying to draw money with.
I wonder if he learns that lesson or if he's looking at all of this attention as a positive overall. Like, I don't know what really goes through that man, but, if there's any sort of wake-up call, I don't know. I'm not so sure this is it. Like, he's not the one who's going to go to jail. He might get a new Rolex out of it, and he's getting a bunch of attention on Twitter. So it's terrible that I think, we're talking about a sport that so much, I mean, more so than pro wrestling, I think blurs the lines between business and reality, and encourages its fighters to almost, like stoke the flames in their real lives to the point where it might get to something like this.
We move on, and another person who blurs the lines, one MJF, was interviewed by Ariel Helwani. And I found this to be a really, really fascinating interview. Probably the most like in-depth interview MJF has done. I can't come up with one that went into anywhere close to it as much depth as this one. And like he's a really interesting figure to sit down and interview. And I thought Ariel did a really fantastic job in terms of going through a lot. How much of this interview did you get to see, if any?
I watched all of it. I listened to all of it. Yeah. Tremendous job. Yeah, Ariel always, comes through with these types of interviews. Like, I mean, of course, does tremendous research and is able to just kind of carry himself in a very personable way to his subject. And yeah, you're right. This was, I think, the most open, at least I've heard of MJF in one of these type of lengthy 1 hour long interviews. And, he absolutely is somebody who is able to kind of weave in and out of kayfabe. But I think much of what he spoke in this interview, I can buy, are his genuine thoughts.
Yeah, and I always find it interesting with someone like an MJF, or if you're talking about like Orange Cassidy, just different ones who like they are so committed to their on-screen persona, and when it comes to where wrestling, where there's a lot of interest in these figures, is a major outlet going to focus on an Orange Cassidy that's going to be interviewed as Orange Cassidy. And I think with MJF, it's a much easier transition, as you can see in these 60 minutes, that the idea of like ESPN, like when you're looking at all these different outlets that have an interest in pro wrestling, and because I think at a time, if you're an outlet, you don't want to be speaking to someone that it's going to be so much of just the on-screen persona. And this, it's like he's pretty much explaining like this is an amplified version of himself. And I thought that the way this came off, I didn't know how it would come off, but I thought it came off tremendously well by the end of it.
I thought so too. Yeah. I think he's somebody who really, really is very smart when it comes to presentation, of course. And I think he knows that, somebody like Ariel is going to look for a bit more meat than simply, a completely 100% in character interview. And I thought MJF was able to provide it, stepping out of character to, discuss topics like, that promo about, him getting picked on, being, for his Jewish background, as part of that football team. So,
yeah, which he said was completely true. Like that story that he told on television about the quarters being thrown at him, and then meeting CM Punk. This was been 2007 when he was 11 years old in middle school, and going to the Hicksville Broadway Mall to meet CM Punk. And
the Hicksville Broadway Mall? That's I
looked this up. Yes.
Wow. Incredible. Okay. Anyway, so I think the stuff that might be the most interest, at least to me, was him talking about his contract status. And I mean, we know, in his promos, even like he's very blatant about how in however many months time, like the WWE is going to be calling, and he's going to be involved in the biggest bidding war this industry has ever seen. And the man is not shy about repeating that, and he has full confidence that that is going to be the case. And I guess if you are that talented, and if you know you're that good, why wouldn't you be so confident?
Yeah, so he said his contract is up January 1st, 2024, which is really interesting, the timing, because that's the current AEW deal, if I'm recalling correctly, with Warner Media goes through the end of 2023. So by that time, you're going to be looking at the potential and probably the likelihood of AEW having a significant rights increase and therefore more revenue coming in that, someone like MJF, I think, is going to be of the utmost priority to keep, and just investing in someone who has just turned 26 years old.
No, it's unbelievable. Absolutely. He has a lot of room to grow, a lot more time left in the business if he so chooses, although he did allude to knowing when, thinking at least, about a time where he might retire. But it's interesting to see this type of thing, and we see it in sports, I think, because in sports it's really undeniable. If a player is performing well, then you have no choice but to pay them. But in professional wrestling, I mean, obviously so much of it is left to the performance, but it's also left to your boss to put you in those positions to perform, and they don't always have to. Now, Tony Khan, he's not one, I think, to simply bench a guy because he probably doesn't want his stock to grow. But it is interesting to at least see this tactic so blatantly out there, because you certainly don't get it so often in the WWE.
Yeah, and I mean, he said that he pretty much said there's no chance of him re-signing before he reaches that free agency, and said even if the number was astronomical, he couldn't guarantee he would resign. It seems like he really wants to play out this contract and then see what the offers are there. Where, I mean, if he became a free agent today, I think like he would have a sizable offer from WWE. And when we're tacking on 2 more years to all of this, providing he does not have any significant injury or any personal issue that would derail him, like this is somebody that you would think it's a layup for either company to throw tons at. At the same time, this is someone that, granted, he is not the MJF of today, but I mean, you watch those Tough Enough tryout videos. Some of them were absolutely cringeworthy, and I come across his video, I'm at least getting him into like beyond like one casting session. And he was 19 at the time, and I think you could certainly see this is probably one of, if not the best talker that came across on those tryout videos.
Yeah. I mean, there are still strikes against him that I think would prevent him from being seen as a top guy in the WWE. Namely, I maybe size might be of a concern. Stacking him next to, I don't know, like a Braun Breaker, for instance, or something. But at this point, the man has really proven himself, and he's made himself a star on this other company. That by the time he comes back, all those things I think will be neglected, and they won't care so much about it. If anything, they'll look at it as a major blow to their competition to steal this guy. So, we'll see what happens.
Do you think that the Cody Rhodes becomes a test case for someone like an MJF? Do you think that ultimately plays a factor, or does it strictly come down to, if he is offered a ridiculous deal that, a lot of guys will have, it's the same confidence that gets you to this level that will also give you the confidence that, okay, they may have screwed up with that guy, I will overcome whatever is thrown at me because I am that great. You have to have that confidence in yourself, and sometimes that can set your mind to, well, they could screw up with a Cody, but they're not. I will get around that. I am above that.
No matter what the case is, no matter how they treat Cody, I mean, I think MJF is still going to look out for MJF and think that he's probably going to be an exception. In the end, as he says in this interview, whether in character or not, he's out there to make money. And whichever company is going to pay him the most money, if it's similar, and if, like, I don't know, WWE is paying like, I don't know, 10K more, but AEW comes with so much more freedom. then yeah, maybe at that point you have a choice. But like in the end, it's about him trying to drive up his market value up the highest as possible. So I think regardless of how Cody is booked, he's going to continue to work WWE and consider WWE a major option, if anything, just for the finances. But yeah, Cody I think is a really, I mean, everybody's going to be looking at him to see how he is booked, whether or not they will book him strong, or they'll do the traditional WWE thing of burying the guy because he's not somebody who they created, or or at least their star is not somebody they created on their own. And also, to me, I think more important for MJF is how much freedom are they going to give a performer on the microphone? Because MJF being scripted by somebody else is certainly taking away all the appeal of what the person presents.
One of the issues that I look at, like we keep repeating the fact that, the biggest story to follow are these next round of TV rights deals for WWE and AEW. But then there's all these little sidebars that come with that. And, we have an industry where I think those that are of the current generation and certainly of the past generation, it's one of just that have accepted the WWE model of how payoffs are, of what revenue makes its way to talent. This is a much bigger issue specifically in the UFC. But what we have seen is that when you are the competitor that is trying to, encompass more of the market share, you're going to have to pay more to get those fighters that are going to go to Bellator or go to PFL. AEW is in a situation where, trying to make it appear the grass is greener. And I look at someone like an MJF who is a much younger generation. Here is someone who, I mean, in this interview, like, it makes you really feel old when he says, I missed the tape trading era. I came up on YouTube and got to see everything and watching Portland and all the territorial wrestling. That
he was watching that stuff at 9.
It was amazing. And what we're going to see in the next, 2 years is AEW potentially strike its largest television distribution deal in the company's short history, and the potential of launching a streaming service that if I have a lot of leverage, I'm saying, listen, what am I going to see out of this? And CM Punk alluded to this in that press conference at the last pay-per-view, the idea of WWE talent not sharing in the network revenue. To me, it's always going to be the younger ones that are coming in, but when you're a young talent, you sometimes don't have that power. MJF is young, and he's going to have a lot of leverage. And if I am looking at all the different metrics, I want a percentage of this television deal. I want a percentage of these streaming deals. And it's going to take more than one person, but like that's kind of the mindset that we don't typically associate with fighters, with wrestlers. But it's one that these numbers are getting incredibly, incredibly high. And like I see so much in like MMA when it comes to this, and so little when it comes to professional wrestling.
So what is the deal with the UFC, like in streaming rights for performers, for fighters? I mean, do you know?
I mean, they're not sharing in any
none, right?
Yeah. What we have seen in the antitrust suit is that like the filings that have come out, and a lot of this reporting has been done by John Nash and others at Bloody Elbow. Like we have seen the court documents that the UFC, like there is a percentage, and it's typically like 16 to 20% of revenue is earmarked for fighters, and they're not going to veer out of that percentage. And we have never seen like meaningful documentation in terms of like WWE revenue, but I mean, for AEW, like they are spending a lot right now that I would imagine they have a higher percentage going to its wrestlers. But when you're introducing all of these other revenue streams, like are there going to be younger wrestlers that are going to be trying to change that model so that they are figured into more of this, instead of discretionary revenue, that they are fixed into some of this?
It's a conversation that I'm guaranteeing you Tony Khan does not want to have. It's probably something he never wants to visit if he doesn't need to. And I think it's a conversation that is going to take, maybe a bit more precedent from the industry at large about,
well, it's going to be the wrestlers that need to spearhead it.
I mean the entertainment industry at large, you know, like anybody who's a part of a movie or something, like, like we have to really like maybe talk about standardizing professional wrestlers as, unionized actors and actresses or performers, in order to maybe enter that sort of conversation. And it's going to take a lot more than just one guy like an MJF, to be able to even broach that topic. Because I don't think, again, Tony Khan and Vince McMahon, these are things that they're probably really afraid of. Because what incentive do they have to suddenly, give a huge chunk of whatever deal that they're making? Think about that ROH library, John. Like, how are you going to break a piece off for every single person who's on one of those shows? How do you come up with that? And I mean, maybe they, morally they probably should, but the headache that's involved with it, I think is probably not something he wants to tackle sooner than later.
Oh, it's certainly not going to come from that side of the equation. It's going to be much like, it's going to be a collective. And I just look at the younger talent that are coming up in much more of a digital age where this is more of a conversation. And I mean, you look at the WWE network and Punk stating, like, I was one of the only ones that was bringing up, like, what happens to our pay-per-view payoffs where now we're going to a network where $54.99 pay-per-view is now available for $9.99. And it's like, how does that
maybe
work?
Punk should lead the charge if he really truly cares that much. Like he was the one who mentioned it. I wonder if he, if after the words came out, like how whether or not he felt like how Tony Khan was going to respond to it. But I mean, now that it's out there, maybe he should be taking the charge because he's somebody with that power.
Yeah, it's one that I don't hold my breath for because I think it's one that always it comes up, and some talent they don't want to rock the boat, or they feel that, hey, I'm compensated enough, I don't have to look out for the greater whole. This is not an industry that typically rewards those that are looking out for everyone else. It's one that take care of yourself. But anyway, that was that's somehow how we strayed away from this interview. But yes, also he loves NXT, noting the charisma machines that are in NXT.
The kissing competition seemed to be a
makeout
big
sessions.
fan.
Yes, he's like, what's that's
hey,
great.
something that I think is true though that is apparent whether or not you truly believe his statement about his thoughts on NXT 2.0. The man watches everything. Clearly he's very much up on. He seems to be a fan of the Great Khan, even though he didn't have very good things to say about New Japan Pro Wrestling at large. So I don't. You see the guy's performance, and you see his knowledge, and you see what comes out in these interviews. There's no doubt he's probably the biggest wrestling fan in the world.
Yeah, I would have loved to have known his thoughts on Geto and Nosawa Rongai.
Mm-hmm.
Who are his?
You think he's watching the New Japan Cup? You think he's got a bracket filled out?
I don't know if he's got a bracket filled out. I'm sure he is watching. Maybe he wants to come on with WH sometime.
Maybe.
Okay, so you can go check out that whole interview on Ariel Helwani's YouTube channel. It's quite the interesting hour-long discussion with MJF. So final thing before we wrap things up, Impact tonight sees a street fight involving Tasha Steelz and Mickie James. This was from the recent Philadelphia tapings. Violent by Design against the Good Brothers in a lumberjack match. Then it will be Rocky Romero taking on Eddie Edwards, Steve Macklin against Heath. A triple threat match with Willie Mack, Laredo Kid, and Speedball Mike Bailey, who is gearing up for an insane week next week during WrestleMania week. It was funny because they announced that they had switched around the Ultimate X match for the Multiverse show next Friday and taking Bailey out. I was like, okay, maybe they think it's just too much. And then he's now in a singles match with Alex Shelley on that show. So he is doing New Japan, then he's doing Impact, and then he's doing Spring Break
GCW.
After Impact. So he's
and then
working,
the next day at noon,
back at
he's got
noon
another match
with Davey Richards. Yeah, so he's doing 3 matches Friday night, and then he's back at noon on Saturday. So this dude is making up for all the Mania weekends that he has missed over the last few years.
Anytime I see somebody go through a schedule like that, I just hope that they stay healthy through it all, because these aren't going to be easy matches. These are like big singles.
Oh, him and PCO have to do something crazy, and that's going to be at 3 a.m.
Yeah. So, hey man, he's definitely gunning to be the talk of WrestleMania weekend, and with this schedule, I mean, just simply pulling it off, I think it will be a feat in itself.
And Josh Alexander will respond to the actions by Moose. So this was on last week's episode where Moose had until the end of the night to sign his side of the contract for Rebellion. Alexander had signed the contract. Moose had to sign his. So in the final minutes of the show, we go to a vehicle that pulls up at a house, and Moose knocks on the door, and he arrives at the residence of Josh Alexander. And his wife, Jade, answers the door, and Moose explains that he was in the area, the Anthem offices are closed, and he wanted to deliver the contract to her. And then he left the contract and left. And leaving this. I don't know where Josh Alexander was. I guess he was at Impact. So, but a camera crew was there outside of his home.
He had to come all the way across the border just to do that.
I guess he was in Toronto. Yes, and the Anthem offices were closed, so he went to their house. They're doing a very good job building up this Moose Josh Alexander match. So there's some really good stuff going on in Impact at the moment for those.
The multiverse of matches, which is I think the best name of any show during WrestleMania weekend. But that card's shaping up to be really really good as well. And I can even try to bring it up if we have it here. So
they're doing back-to-back shows. I've got it here. So far we have the X Division Championship, which will be Ultimate X. Trey Miguel defending against Jordan Grace, Chris Bay, Rich Swann, Vincent, and Willie Mack. Moose and PCO against Josh Alexander and Jonah. The Briscoes against the Good Brothers. So the Briscoes are coming to this show right after Supercard of Honor. So they're going from Garland to the Fairmont Hotel for the Multiverse show. Jay White against Chris Sabin, which should be excellent. Tomohiro Ishii and Eddie Edwards, which should be very good. Alex Shelley against Speedball. Those are the announced matches, and probably some more to come. And then they're doing their Impact Provincial Wrestling Federation show right after, which is kind of their what was it, the Southpaw Regional Wrestling, their version of that WWE did. Remember the spoof?
Right. Yeah. Yes, I do. Yes. Yeah, no, it seems like there's going to be a lot of great stuff during WrestleMania weekend, and I think absolutely Impact is looking to deliver as well. We have a guest tomorrow, speaking of WrestleMania weekend, don't we, John?
Yes, tomorrow joining us on the show will be Mike Weber, the COO of Fight TV. So I thought he would be an interesting person to talk to as they get set for their biggest week of the year that is going to be housing most of this non-WWE events that are happening next week. They have all of the collective shows, the WrestleCon shows, Impact, as we mentioned, which is attached to WrestleCon. So we'll chat with him just about the streaming service in general, how it's growing from the first WrestleMania weekend that they became the platform for, and largely being the streaming platform of choice, that if there is a show going on, it's likely going to be on Fight TV.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to getting to some of these super chats, John, because it is a very special day here in the post-wrestling universe.
Oh, my goodness.
It is the birthday of our favorite... Do I want to say that? It is the birthday of... Yeah, I'm going to say it. Our favorite person from New Jersey, among many, because we have many favorites from New Jersey. But today, this man is our favorite. His name is Brandon from New Jersey, and for his birthday, decided to spend money on us with a $5 super chat just to say, when Pat two-sweeted Finn, did that mean he is in Bullet Club? Is he a worse member than Jarrett and Scott D'Amore? I yield my time.
Okay, well, great question, Brandon. I don't know if this led to Pat McAfee being infiltrated by the Bullet Club.
I'm going to say yes. Sure, why not? He's in.
All right, he's in. He would rank ahead of Jarrett and Scott D'Amore.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon, and happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Brandon.
Adam Joy sends a €3 super chat just to also say happy birthday to everybody's favorite, Brandon.
I like how Brandon from New Jersey is his birthday. We profit from.
Yeah, I know. It's all going to us. So thanks, Brandon, for.
I'd offer it to Brandon, but then he'd have to show up and see our faces. So I know he's not going to come and collect.
We're going to keep it in a little envelope for you, Brandon. You know, all the super chats attributed to Brandon from New Jersey. Just pick it up here in Toronto.
He's at the side of the road now, howling.
Hey, John, so I'm back tonight for...
That's right.
The return of MCU later, me and WH Park. I mean, I'm not going to be talking to him about any sort of Japanese wrestling from the 90s. I'm going to be talking to him about Moon Knight. You know much about Moon Knight, John?
If I had $1 for everything I knew about Moon Knight, I'd be broke.
I'd probably be broke right there with you because I know very little about this character. But, you know, all reports seem to indicate that this is one of the most talked about, most positively reviewed Disney Plus shows to come. So maybe you'll end up watching this. We're also going to give some of our thoughts on the Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman that we both had a chance to go watch in the theaters. So that returns tonight, a primer episode of MCU later, a prequel, as some people may call it.
All right, well, check that out. All patrons will get access to that primer and then weekly reviews of Moon Knight every Thursday at postwrestlingcafe.com. So we're back tomorrow at this very same time for the Post Daily News Show, and then Friday night, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time, back to our normal start time for Friday nights, as we will have reviews of SmackDown and Rampage. So a happy birthday to one Brandon from New Jersey. Thank you to Wai Ting, as always, for putting up with me. And we will be back on Friday.